So it's time for the mid-season hiatus with My Little Pony Season 6, Episode 12, Spice Up Your Life. Not really a hiatus-worthy episode, as nothing major happened, but it was a pretty decent episode that we got regardless. Decent plot, decent comedy, decent song, and some interesting things that happened. Seems that the map has been broken for a while, and that's why we haven't gotten the map mission episodes lately. Even though that explanation wasn't necessary, it did lead to some interesting comedy, as the cutie marks seem to be glitching out on the map, and then they finally discover a mission. It's hard to say whether this was a one-off visual gag or whether it's something a little bit more important to consider as we go through the rest of the season. Maybe we should be remembering the fact that the map was glitching out, and that might mean something. Or, it could just be a gag. As Pinky watches the map glitching out, she calls out several locations that I really wish were episodes. While they may be episodes in the future, I really wish we had gone to Los Pegasus or Yakistan instead of going to Canterlot again. Although I guess it is a bit of a compromise that while we were in a familiar city, we were exposed to a brand new culture and a couple of different varieties of pony body shapes. Still, Pinkie Pie did seem to be saying the exact words that any brony watching the episode was saying at the time. I hope we go to someplace way far away that no pony has ever been to before. So anyhow, we get the equestrian version of ponies from India, with accents that are hard to understand and names that are a little bit weird. I didn't quite catch everything that was going on during my first couple of viewings, but things eventually evened out. We come across a father and daughter who run a restaurant, but the restaurant isn't very popular because it hasn't been rated by the upper class, highly popular food critic who always has to give her stamp of approval to restaurants before ponies in Canterlot will even consider trying the restaurant. This leads us up against Rarity's need to follow trends and conform, and Pinky's desire to stand out and be unique. Rarity knows something that disagrees with her attitude towards fashion, but is all too apparent as the montage of the episode goes on, and that is that Canterlot ponies are such highfalutin, high-class, snobby, yuppie characters that they want nothing to do with anything that is not the latest and greatest trends. Rarity's idea of be the same as everyone else and fit in may not be a good message, but it is the right message, because trying to stand out and be unique only got your restaurant snubbed by a stuck-up crowd that was too focused on ratings and trends and just all straight out refused to give it a chance. Pinkie Pie's message of stand out and be unique was a great message, and ultimately the message that was needed to save the restaurant, but it wasn't grabbing the attention of any of the Canterlot ponies and only appealed to the tourists who saw what Pinkie Pie saw, a long stretch of identical restaurants with no flavor or taste. Ultimately, it came down to Rarity having to use her high society influence as a well-respected fashion designer to endorse the restaurant so that even though it doesn't have the free hoof rating that ponies so desire, it still has the endorsement of a somewhat celebrity that Canterlot ponies respect. And with Pinkie Pie helping to push its unique flavor, ponies who finally tasted the food were woken up to the fact that it's better to be unique and stand out and to make your food your way and make your food taste great than it is to cave into the opinions of a critic who everybody's hanging on that critic's every word and blindly following that critic's opinion as if it were law. It was interesting at the end of the episode that the food critic never learns any kind of lesson. She just storms out of the restaurant without tasting the food and never ever realizes how wrong she really was. The father and daughter pair could have been any number of returning characters, like Zipperwill and her father, or Plaid Stripes and her father, or maybe even Diamond Tiara and Filthy Rich, or any number of other combinations. But I think it worked out really well, and we did pretty good to introduce these brand new ponies. A different culture, different body types, really helps expand the world of Equestria and make it feel like a place full of rich, diverse cultures. We got a really catchy song in this one too. A lot catchier than some of the songs of the past. This one will actually be stuck in my head. Unlike the song from Flutterbrutter, this was a song worth singing and repeating over and over again. It may not be right up there with Heart's Warming Tale, but it could definitely contend with them a lot more than Apple Bloom's song about being alone or any of the other ones that we got before and after Heart's Warming Tale. It was definitely fun to hear the unique Indian style music notes and to get a little bit of a different type of song that we're not accustomed to hearing. It was also kind of interesting how the arrow sign that Pinkie was spinning to draw in attention to the restaurant kind of resembles a Starbucks sign. At first I thought this was going to be a coffee shop when I saw the thumbnail as a still by itself. But it turned out to be an Indian food place, so that was pretty neat too. Also, elephants are canon to the My Little Pony world. And this also reminds me and a few others of an episode of Seinfeld where Jerry tries to help a foreign restaurant owner be successful with his restaurant, but makes some bad decisions and the restaurant ends up failing. I think the same story could have also been done pretty well with Applejack or Rainbow Dash. I feel that Fluttershy wouldn't have stood up to Rarity and argued against her decisions, and Twilight probably wouldn't have known enough about food to have gone against Rarity either, although Twilight could certainly have had a little more influence over endorsing the restaurant and influencing ponies around her to show up, including influencing Minuet and her friends, who seem to ignore Pinkie and stay with the whole habit of being a Canterlot pony who has to snub new fins. I think Applejack and Rainbow Dash probably would have been on Pinkie Pie's side in this situation, as both are very likely to have tasted food known that food was good, known that flavor was good, and not understood why flavorless food was trendy and posh and expensive and all that. They would have definitely have been in favor of the tastier, larger, more exotic portions, and probably would have struggled just as much as Pinkie Pie to bring in those customers. But I think the Pinkie Pie Rarity combo worked out just fine no matter who else is substituted in this situation. I do feel, however, that Minuet was being out of character, sticking with the trendy, snobby Canterlot ponies instead of being her cheery, upbeat, happy-go-lucky self who, doesn't care about ratings and eats at donut places. And also the fact that she knows Pinkie Pie personally and would have taken the time to catch up with her friend and hug her and say hello before ultimately explaining why she can't attend the opening. Although she was quickly redeemed as she was part of the crowd that showed up when the restaurant was being reopened. Finally, unless there's something that we're not quite aware of off the immediate first viewing, there were no bad guys or enemies or major fights in this story. It's a straight up slice of life, and the only thing it really did was reintroduce the map stuff. Spike had a couple of lines, Starlight Glimmer was there but didn't have lines, and the rest of the main sets were just present to help reactivate the map. There wasn't anything really epic about this other than reintroducing the map to the plots, and maybe the rest of the season after this will be much more map centered. Still a bit early to tell whether or not the whole map glitching out occasionally or the map capable of being broken is something that will come back and this is some kind of setup or foreshadowing, or whether it was just strictly a gag. I think the next time the map goes out, you should just sort of kick it and see if it flickers back on. Anyhow, I'll leave you with one final thought. How does this story compare to internet critics? Do fans tend to follow internet critics with no opinion of their own? Do internet critics who rate things end up having their word be law? Do they end up feeling that their opinion is above the opinions of others? And when you create content for YouTube to be judged by critics, do you do what everybody else does? Or do you do something unique that stands out from the crowd and ends up being different from what everybody else is doing? Let me know in the comments section below. Thank you for watching and good night.